Hello, everybody. My name's Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hey, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples of how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you are ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, how to go about finding financing if that's important to you, and driving your business through to the end consumer. The bottom line is we would love to help you grow your business and avoid some of the mistakes Tracy and I have made along the years. We've made some mistakes, we've done a few good things, and we'd love to share that with you today. With that in mind, if you don't mind, please consider following this podcast on iTunes or Spotify. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague who may benefit from the content of the show, which is really focused on helping small, emerging, and challenger brands. Tracy?
Absolutely. So as Bruce mentioned, we've been in what we call commercial operations for 30 plus years, done some good things, made some mistakes along the way. But what we really mean by commercial operations is sales, marketing, trade marketing, acquisitions, divestitures, managing distributors, managing brokers, managing outside resources. So a lot of those topics we talk about on our podcast. Also, from time to time, we interview colleagues, people that we know in the industry, service providers, and also brand owners. So today we have one of our colleagues, and we'd like to introduce him. So Bruce, tell us about who we have on the show today.
Oh, we have a special guest today and longtime friend of the firm, Marc Perez. Marc is president of Menper Group, which is a very unique Hispanic-focused company that develops and sells health and personal care products. So Marc, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on today.
Great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. So Marc, before we jump in, why don't you give the folks a little background on Marc Perez, how he got here, and then if you don't mind, a little bit about Menper Group itself.
Sure, happy to. Once again, thanks for having me, guys. So I'm Marc Perez, as you mentioned. I'm the president of Menper Group. We are really a portfolio of brands, all focused on the Hispanic market in the United States. And I can get more into the background and the origin story of the company in a bit. Just quickly on me, I started my career with Menper. I actually worked there in the summers in college in the warehouse, and then full time for a couple of years, right out of undergraduate. And then, and I'll get into this more in the story behind Menper. We're a family company. Because it was a family business, after a couple of years of doing that full time, I got sick of being around family all the time, and went and spent a few years in investment banking and then private equity. About 3.5 years ago, I got a call from the founder of the company is my grandfather, asking me to come back and help lead the business. And so I've done that full time for the past 3.5 years, which has been an incredibly humbling experience. I think coming out of certain finance roles, you have a big ego and you think you know everything about operations, and then when you sit back in the leadership seat, you realize how much you don't know and how much you need good people around you. So that's a little bit of background on me. Our business, like I mentioned, is 100% focused on the Hispanic market in the United States. We've had opportunities to do things outside of the U.S., but frankly, our focus has been and remained the Hispanic market here in the United States, which is a tremendous market. We started. The business has been around in some shape or form since 1982. We started really as just kind of a side business of my grandfather. He was a pharmacist in Cuba, and then like many Cubans came to the U.S. in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and did what they knew. So he had a number of different retail pharmacies in the South Florida area, one or two at a time, not a big operation. But he always had a side business because he had customers who would come into his stores and ask for products that they knew from Cuba that for obvious reasons hadn't made their way to the United States. And so he thought there was an opportunity to create products that were very similar to the things that consumers knew and trusted in Cuba, but in the US under similar brands or identical brands under those same formulations. And that idea that of providing customer product that they know, they trust, really from tradition, is still what we do today. It looks a lot different, the way we source those brands, the way we create the products, but that same fundamental concept is how we built our business, and it's what we do today.
Well, kudos to your grandfather for understanding what lots of people don't, that the best way to succeed is to find a market with unmet needs and step in there and fill it. So one question for you, Marc, before we kick it over to Tracy. With your time in private equity, how's your recovery program going? Are you almost okay now?
It's slow. It's slow. It's slow. I think it takes, like I said, it takes a lot of humility to run a business. I think run a business well. And so that's not something that's always present in spades in the finance world. It's something that, maybe personally I like to think I have a healthy dose of, but it's something that's been enhanced. You realize how much you don't know when you step into a business full time. And then like
any business, the weird things that pop up each day that you don't even know when you get out of bed. So, but thank you for that background. Really interesting. Tracy?
Yeah. So Marc, I want to talk a little bit about a big topic that we talk a lot about on our podcast, which is the importance of product differentiation as well as uniqueness. So obviously you have a very, you're in a niche market. So maybe talk to our audience a little bit about the differentiation and then uniqueness as it relates to the products that you produce. Some that, is it really about the health benefits of the products, or is the uniqueness and differentiation the focus on the Hispanic market?
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination of those two, Tracy. We lead with brand. I mean, so for us, the idea is when a consumer has a need, whatever that might be, and again, we focus on health and personal care. So a lot of times it's when someone's child is sick, when they're sick, a time when they default to the things that they know and trust. So we're trying to provide those brands that those folks that the Hispanic consumer in the United States recognizes, so that when that need arises, they buy what they know, what they trust. So that very much is, leveraging brands that we've built or that someone is familiar with from Hispanic tradition. And so we lead with that. Now, that's great. You can get somebody to buy a brand. If you don't deliver a quality product and an effective product, they're not going to come back to it for very long. And so everything that we do, a lot of our brands have heritage in Latin America. We historically had made some things in Latin America, and there's some great contract manufacturers there. Everything we do, obviously, is FDA compliant. Effectively, everything is manufactured here in the United States now. So we're trying to leverage those brands. That's our lead. But then we're also trying to deliver a great customer experience and a great product to those individuals so they keep coming back to that brand that they know and trust.
That's good. So what you're saying is it's a combination of the heritage of the brand and the efficacy of the brand.
Yeah, it's a combination of those two. I think it's, this is particularly in particularly healthcare products. I mean, it's, this is an important time, an important product for people. They see through, kind of smoke and mirrors and snake oil. And so there's a lot of, great brands that are spending a lot on marketing, but the lifetime value of a consumer is a heck of a lot better if you invest a little more in delivering a great product up front.
Good. Excellent. Bruce?
Hey, Marc.
Oh, actually, that's me. Sorry, that's my bad.
Okay.
So let's talk about contract manufacturing. So I know this is near and dear to all of our hearts, but I know that a lot of small emerging brands, struggle with, finding a contract manufacturer, one that's reliable, one that's got, a reasonable MOQ, which is minimum order quantity. But maybe what counsel would you give a small emerging brand about securing, a contract manufacturer, and then also, really the importance of having a secondary contract manufacturing as well?
Yeah, when I talked about the things that I didn't know coming into a business, I'd say this is one where I've had to make we as an organization have made some mistakes in order. Yeah, but I think we've learned a lot, are a lot better at sourcing now than we've ever been. I guess I have a couple things. I mean, first, I think about it as almost kind of three stages to this process. There's a front end process where you really have to know what you want in a product. You have to know your formulation well. You have to know what you'll accept, what you won't accept, particularly if you're bringing an established product to a new manufacturer. And have to know the band of outcomes and be very firm in that. I would say, there's a lot of great resources on the front end to source those manufacturers. Things like going to a PLMA show or doing an ECRM show, getting in front of those individuals and having conversations with a variety of folks where we really learn a lot about, again, the band of outcomes that is possible, and then help you to narrow in on what you'll accept. And then I'd say the third thing that we've learned is talk to references from contract manufacturers. So whether that be folks like yourselves who know a bunch of people in the industry, or asking those manufacturers for references of other clients, that really helps. It's the best source of kind of just truth of how those plants operate. And then I'll say the second place is kind of the middle stage when you're really setting up for production with a contract manufacturer. Finding your all-in costs on a CPG brand is a lot harder than you would think. Again, going back to my finance experience, you live, eat, and breathe the world of spreadsheets, and everything looks great on a spreadsheet, and you don't learn to factor in things like waste or the working capital cycle associated with it. You really kind of have to build in a nice margin of safety in both pricing your product to the end consumer, and then also the way you're structuring that relationship with the contract manufacturer. And part of that, Tracy, to your point about MOQs, that's a big piece of it. I think everybody wants to believe their product is going to go like gangbusters. And you can certainly scenario plan for that to happen. But we tend to take a very conservative view and say, hey, here's our baseline assumption. Here's frankly this product just peters out and stinks. This is what we can afford to have as waste. We kind of build that into all the kind of the scenario planning that we do when we launch with a contract manufacturer now, which is something we never did when we started out. We kind of had, here's our forecast, let's produce to our forecast, and that's it. And there were times we ended up eating a lot of product because we basically overpromised to a contract manufacturer. And so now we take a much more conservative approach to dealing with those folks.
That's smart. It's
and I guess the last thing,
balancing act. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And I said the last thing, just kind of build off that last point, is communicating both directions. Good news and especially bad news early with those contract manufacturers really helps, because the last thing that anybody wants is a surprise. If they're preparing for a run and you say, hey, I'm fully stocked with product, just creates more problems. So as soon as we see a trend line that's relevant to adjusting our demand, we try to be as quick as possible in communicating that to our partners.
So a couple of things here, folks, that let's summarize what Marc said. That's pretty darn key. First off, early on, he said part of the success of Menper Group is being highly focused, right? So they focus against the Hispanic audience. Now, if someone else from another demographic wants to try their products, I'm sure Marc will not turn that down. But focus is always the key, because otherwise you spread your attention too broadly. Next, how many times have we all discussed knowing, to use Marc's phrase, which Tracy and I use all the time, is understand your all-in cost. Lots of small brands, if they don't get this figured out, and it's hard to get it figured out. But you can't just turn around and go to your retailer and say, oh, I screwed up and I really need another 17 cents per unit. Once you submit that price, they're going to say, that's your problem, not mine. And you're going to have to figure out how to make that up. And then lastly, a personal favorite is, as Marc said, bad news has to travel faster than good news. Okay. Don't think you can hide your bad news, that people won't notice it, that you'll fix it before it really matters. Not only does it, the truth is always the easiest thing to remember. So pass that along quickly. And then it actually builds credibility, because if you call up and say, hey, here's a problem, here's a few of our ideas to fix it, they'll be much more likely to continue sticking their neck out for a small emerging brand versus saying, man, here's another guy that was a dreamer that's wobbly. So now my antenna is really up. So Marc, thank you for that. So let's press on. And I hope this isn't counter to your comment on focus, but as you guys grow and as the leader of your firm, how do you think about where you might want to expand a brand, whether it's, geographically or through a line extension, or possibly acquire or create a new one from scratch? Like, what are some of those filters that, either you and your team work through, or you challenge your team to work through before they even bring it to you?
Yeah, I'd say so. This is going to indirectly answer your question, Bruce. Let me just set the stage. So, our brands, like I said, are all Hispanic focused, and that tends to be a broad term, in the United States. Really, the Hispanic market is a bunch of subsegments of the Hispanic market that's kind of made up of Cubans in South Florida, which consume a lot different than Mexican population in Texas, for example. And certainly there's some commonalities in the branding and the language, that some of the cultural elements that are shared, but there really are two different consumers. And so, part of when we take an approach to brand, it's, hey, where are, if it's a Cuban focused brand, where are these pockets of Cubans that have expanded across the country, and how do we target them both through mass retailers with CVS or Walgreens, but then also through independent channels, which is a big portion of our market. So we take where is the customer base is the first step when we look at geographic expansion. And then, I think and then we take kind of a multi-channel approach to that expansion. So for us, a big portion of launching a product and proving that out before we take it to mass retailers is an independent channel, which a lot of these distributors, they don't get called on to nearly as much as that buyer in Bentonville at Walmart. And so they're easier to penetrate. And so we'll look for, folks who are servicing those customers that are a little easier to get into and in front of when we look to expand a product. We're fortunate now, we have some great distribution partners across the country that trust our track record that we've had. And so when we come out with a line extension or a new product, and they'll say, hey, we'll try it out for you. We'll put it in our salespeople's hands and let them take it to store. And we'll do some cooperative marketing things to help launch a product with them. But it's very much, we've got trust built up with our partners. Therefore, they're willing to take a little bit of risk with us. And then lastly, I would say, just on the kind of product category extension, again, Hispanic market has its own unique things, but we keep our eye to the ground on, what a lot of the big players are doing when it comes to dosage forms, or it comes to, formats for our brands. So little things like, we have an analgesic, a pain relieving cream. That's a big brand for us. We put that in a roll-on format. We keep our ear to the ground on what a lot of the big players are doing, because our market, yes, it's smaller, can be a little bit slower to move, but our customers are wanting the same ease of use, new dosage forms that the mass market is looking for as well. And so we can, in some ways, copycat what some of the large players are doing.
That's
Thanks,
good.
Marc.
Great insight. So talking about growth on another context, and that is geographic growth. So when you look at maybe a market to expand into, do you launch with your full portfolio of products? Do you start with just one brand or one segment? What does that look like for the Menper Group when you look to go into another market?
Yeah, we lead with some key brands where we know we're going to have success. The idea is we want to walk before we run with a new partner. Now, we have, at this point, 150 SKUs. I think we've had people go into new distributors and say, hey, you got to carry everything. And it's overwhelming. You're spitting some BS, because not everything's going to fit that market. So we try to say, hey, here are the 3 or 4 things that we know are going to be successful. And then here are some add-ons to that core portfolio where we think you're going to be successful. And we're not going to get all of them right, but if we get 75%, we're going to build a lot of credibility with that partner. And then we can continue we can take out the 25% that aren't working and try again. So it's a little bit of a hybrid, Tracy, I guess, to answer your question directly.
Right.
We've got some key brands. We've got some stuff that we like to try. And then, but we want to make sure that we're building the credibility with a new partner when we launch.
And that goes back to what Bruce said, the importance of focus. So you're not trying to be everything to everybody, and starting really with your strength and then building it from there, which is a great strategy.
That's right.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, Mark, one thing about geographic expansion, one of the things Tracy and I have talked about with other guests is the importance of going to places that are logical. So, you go to trade show or a buyer might move to a new retailer. Do you find that sometimes you get inquiries from a retailer that might be exciting, getting that inbound call, but then you just have to say no because either the population demo doesn't match or the shipping to the Pacific Northwest, just pulling a name out of the hat, doesn't make sense? Is no in your vocabulary?
We try. It goes against my focus comment, but we try not to. We try to be solutions oriented and try and find a way to make those situations work. Are there times that, if we have a distributor in, let's say, Los Angeles, for example, and somebody else down the street calls and says, hey, we want to carry the same brand, we're probably going to say no, because we don't want to step on the folks who, have been our partners for a long time. We do that all the time. If it's something like that, hey, if there's a hole in our distribution and the Pacific Northwest is, all going to be incremental, we're gonna first try and price it accordingly. So we're gonna build in that, that incremental freight cost to get the product there. Because hey, look, our business is based in Miami. It's not that efficient to ship something over the road from Miami to Portland, let's say. But we can price that. We have enough, we have ability to build that into the pricing. And so we're gonna try and make that work. But are we gonna sacrifice margin? Are we going to lose money on every product that we send from Miami to Portland? No, or at least not for a long period of time. And so, we have to be, I guess, judicious. I don't know if to use a buzzword maybe about the opportunities we do take on. And then I guess the other thing is, hey, we're a small team, and so if there are times that interesting things come about, and we can't do everything at once. We're still keeping the trains running on time. At the same time, we're trying to grow the business. And so we have to pick and choose, kind of prioritize the things that we're chasing after. And so that Pacific Northwest opportunity is a low margin opportunity, and there's something else that's, creates more value for our business. We're going to take on the latter every time.
Right. But that's good discipline, because we have guests that come on and they tell stories about they met a buyer at a trade show that gave them a meeting and wants to carry some items, but they're a New England based oatmeal cookie company and they don't know why they failed at Fry's in Phoenix.
Right.
So,
right.
So pressing on a little bit deeper here in terms of growth and selling, tell us your kind of philosophy or how you've managed Menper with regard to your sales organizations. How do you and your team think through, I need my own team, I need a broker, I go with distributors. I mean, there's many ways to go to market. How do you go to market, and what's your decision tree look like, where it's better to have maybe a broker manager and hire 4 brokers, or where you're like, you know what, I just need 2 of my own people and they can shepherd the rest of this?
Yeah. I said it before, and we're a small team, so we lean on a variety of outside partners, brokers, and distributors to give our team leverage. Just how we chose to build our business. There's some great businesses that have everything internal. That works for some people. For us, we've tried to stay fairly lean. We've got a great team, but it's a small team based out of Miami, and so we know what we can do, and we know where we need to rely on other people. So, for example, we've got a great distributor that works with a lot of our brands at CVS and Walgreens. They're specifically built to do that day in, day out. We decided to partner with them for those channels. And so that's an example where, hey, we just know what we're good at, which is creating these brands, getting them manufactured and getting them launched. They're good at the day-to-day mechanics of working with those large retailers. We do have some sales brokers. We have today we have 4 sales brokers that are kind of assigned to different areas of the country. But again, they can't be in every store merchandising product. We're just not set up that way. So they're tasked with finding distribution partners and then managing those accounts once they've found them, that again give leverage to our organization. So certainly you sacrifice, margin by building in a distribution partner versus going direct to retailer. But end of the day, we've chosen to build our business that way. We think, hey, we can sleep well at night, having those partners that we trust representing us. And that's how we've chosen to build our business.
And one more question on this, Mark, before we press on. Can you just add a little bit more color in terms of, how you manage these distributors or brokers? Because one of the things that very small companies and founder-led organizations struggle with is letting go. So how do you set your priorities for your selling organization? Not only with your internal people, but then what you expect them to carry outside to the people that actually face the customers.
Yeah, it's again, it's because of our business is these kind of nuanced customer base. It's specific to each distributor, but there are a core set of brands that we expect everybody to carry. We do not have formalized quarterly reviews with a lot of our independent distributors. There's certainly larger ones that we have a more regular touch points, but for a lot of folks, it's, hey, we're going to be in the Mid-Atlantic, and we're going to be in North Carolina and Georgia. Let's set up. And we try to see people at least twice a year. Again, we can do some stuff virtually, but we usually like to go sit down, see the operation, do a ride along to go see the stores.
Smart.
And you can get a pretty good sense by both hearing verbally what's going on, but then also seeing, because usually somebody's going to take you to the best stores that they've merchandised. And so you can get a pretty good sense by riding along what's happening in the market. And you can get a lot of stuff anecdotally, but seeing it, driving around for a couple of days, that's the best way that we feel like we can both get feedback and then validate that feedback from our partners.
Shout out to Tim Hayes. When I was a young brand manager going out on market visits, he said, Bruce, they're going to take you on a milk run. And I said, Tim, what the hell is a milk run? He goes, they're going to show you the 4 stores that are great. He said, do me a favor. When you're driving around and you see a store, tell them that's the one you want to go in. Don't let them choose, you choose.
Yep.
So,
I knew you were going to mention that. And I've been on several milk runs in my day. And so have you, Bruce. So I love that. But another thought I had on what you said, Mark, is that I have a kind of a philosophy that people respect what you inspect. So I applaud you for getting out in the field and really, developing that partnership and looking at what's really going on. You can't manage the business from your desk.
No. And the relationships that you build, I mean, those carry a lot of weight. And you do that best, at least we believe, you do that best in person with consistency and being in front of people.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing up the milk run idea, though, Bruce. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, creating consumer demand. So talk to us a little bit about what you guys do to, create consumer demand, and maybe a little bit about your Amazon business, if that applies as well.
Yeah, we on the consumer demand, again, we lead with these brands that have a lot of heritage. So the idea is, they have established equity with the consumer. So when somebody sees them on the shelf, they're buying it not so much because they saw it on television the night before, but because it's the same thing that their mother gave to them when they were younger, or it's just, there's a sense of familiarity, which again translates even more so within healthcare products, at least I believe, than food or other categories. You go with what you trust when you're sick or when somebody in your family is sick. So those brands drive a lot of the consumer purchasing decisions for us, the heritage those brands have. Certainly we do things on social media. We do a lot of community events, sometimes in partnership with our distributors, to make sure those brands are continuing to resonate and stay top of mind with consumers. But I mean, hey, we don't do TV. We do some digital, but we don't have huge marketing budgets. And so we really rely on some of those grassroots work and then the heritage those brands have to drive customer awareness and conversion. I'd say, Amazon is a interesting channel for us. There's for a couple of different reasons. And I'll be the first to admit we could be better at it. We've got certain brands, where we've decided to partner again with distributors to represent them on Amazon. Distributors that this is their bread and butter, similar to our decision to do that at retail. but for us, it's a really interesting channel because, I was talking before about how we have different segments of the Hispanic population spread across the United States. Well, certainly there's clusters of, Cubans in South Florida and Cubans in the Tampa area, but there's Cuban consumers who might be in, Minnesota for whatever reason. And so for us, it's an access point for somebody who may not have, for a niche product that may not be in a geography where that person is living, to access that product. And that's great. That's tremendous for us. It's a whole new channel that didn't exist 5-10 years ago, really.
Mhm.
And so it's a really important way for us to reach a wider breadth of our consumer base that we wouldn't otherwise be able to reach.
So just to
Good
kind of
extension.
recap, so you have really it's a heritage or a legacy brand. This is what my mom gave me when I was sick. So now I'm going to give it to my children. But that newer generation is much more savvy, and they're going to go on and say, okay, I want to buy this on Amazon because I live in a part of the country that I can't access it.
Yeah, it's both. Yeah, so it's right. It's somebody who they might be accessing, or that's just they're buying it. Look, I mean, I'm relatively young. I buy most of my household goods on Amazon. It's just how I've kind of been, how I've consumed over the last number of years. It's how I've been conditioned to purchase. And I think there's a lot of similar consumers, especially mothers now are effectively, generally speaking, millennial consumers. And so a lot of them are defaulting to Amazon for purchasing products. So it's hard for us to quantify how much of our business today is coming through that channel, but it's certainly an increasing piece of our overall mix.
That's great. I love it.
Yep.
Bruce?
Thanks. Hey, Mark, so let's switch gears a little bit, and you might suffer a little PTSD, but let's talk about your banking and finance days a bit, because you were quite clear that Menper's family owned, and I'm assuming privately held. But from your days as a private equity guy or investment banker, what would it take for Menper to consider accepting an outside investor? What would the profile of that person look like? And then the follow-up question to that be, when you were a banker, what were you looking for in a small emerging brand? Let's say, what would you need to see, the characteristics or the financials of that founder or their business, to make you go, you know what? While any investment carries risk, I kind of like this. I'm in. So I'll let you roll for a bit. So what would it take for you to accept an investor? And the answer could be, hypothetically, Bruce, I'll answer it, but the answer is no. We're privately held. We like it that way. But what are the traits an investor would have to show you where you're like, I'm at least listening? And then back to your banking days, what did you need to see in a presentation or the profile of a founder before you would even reco to your team, hey, we should write a check here?
Sure. Yeah, we're not actively looking to sell the business. We have had inquiries, but it's a family business. We're continuing to run it. I think it would take a big Brinks truck probably to get us to the table. But we have. But I think the things that I would look for in an investor is, frankly, again, you kind of read all types in the finance world. I think the ones that have the most credibility are folks who have some domain expertise and have a track record of building successfully companies in a sector. So certainly relevant track record would be an important one. And then I think, some private equity firms or investors, may have a very specific playbook on how they like to build businesses. I think a lot of times that creates a lot of friction in a business that was previously family run or family owned. Not to say that those changes aren't right, but a lot of times you got to have the right humility and tact, and also kind of experience working with founder and family owned businesses to do that. So that's not true of business that might have been venture capital backed, but certainly in a family owned business, preserving some of the culture up. We're not saying that we do everything right in the family run business, but again, kind of building on that foundation without taking down the foundation as you're starting to build on it is important. And I would look for something like that in a prospective investor or buyer of our business, because legacy is important. I'd say the what I would putting on the other side of putting myself back into the investor world. And again, this is somewhat dependent on the stage of company. I think, there's capital at all different stages that all looks for all different types of things. I think for a venture backed business, which was not what I did, but you look for something that's certainly high growth and has a lot of momentum. In the more mature businesses, kind of the more private equity or growth equity stage, a lot of that is about, frankly, de-risking the investment. You can look at a spreadsheet, you can look at a growth rate, you can see the addressable market. That stuff's all quantifiable and is one of the first boxes that gets checked. But when you sit down with the team, having somebody that really knows the numbers, having somebody that really eats, sleeps, and breathes the market, all of those things help to de-risk the investment profile and just give a lot of confidence to a prospective investor. So I'd say if you're sitting down with somebody, know the numbers, know them cold, or have somebody right next to you that knows them cold, because that's the first sign of building rapport and building confidence with a financial person. And then I would say secondarily, have a plan on where you want to grow, on how you want to grow, and the capital it takes to do it. There's a kind of a joke that people say, hey, if I just had $1 million for marketing, I could ramp this business. Well, that may be true, but you got to be very clear about how you're going to deploy that money, the return associated with it based on the gross margins you're going to drive. Just sitting down with those folks, they're quantitatively minded. Try and meet them where they are and have your numbers down pat and your growth plan associated with it.
So Mark, you said a couple of things there that are really interesting. I'd just like to follow up on. So when you were saying, what it would take to get someone even to the table to talk to you about Menper, you mentioned culture and not like burning down the whole house if you decided to bring in an investor or sell. I think that's super important. But when you were an investor, how hard did you guys consider culture? Like, let's say Bruce and Tracy walk in, we have a pretty good idea. We're reasonably buttoned up. We've got good margins. We have a track record. But, are you guys looking for a vibe that this is going to be a good marriage, or is it pure black and white? Either the numbers talk or they don't.
No, I think they have to. Yeah, I think they have to work together. I mean, the numbers have to check out for anybody to come to the table. And I think it's somewhat dependent on the situation. But generally speaking, if you're going to make an investment and continue to back that team, you do not want to sit down with that person, that team every quarter and know you're going to butt heads. You're not going to have it. Life's too short for an investor and frankly for a team. And so you have to have some rapport and some good working relationship. I think, and then, similarly, it takes a long time to change a culture in a company. And so if you kind of stepping into something where you don't like what the people have done historically, it's hard enough to grow a business and build a business and sell more and do it profitably. If you're trying to change out the manufacturing base and change out all the distribution partners, and that's a tough slug. And so as an investor, you want to make sure what the team has done kind of makes sense. There might be ways to change it on the margin, but you don't want to have to reinvent the wheel after making an investment. You want to find something that has the right pieces in place when you step into an investment, so you don't have to change out everything.
So one last follow-up here, Mark. So could you just talk for a second, because we've had entrepreneurs and then personal experiences talking to investor groups or successful entrepreneurs that might have already had one or two exits. And we've heard, all I need is a check. I know exactly what I'm doing.
Sure.
And I've met some people that I honestly believe that is all they need. But talk the difference about, writing the check and then also the importance of kind of seeking out value-added capital. If you're doing health and wellness products and Tracy's firm excels in investing historically in health and wellness versus me, who maybe's invested in ice cream products, talk about, value-added capital versus just money.
Yeah, and look, I'm not against money. Like if somebody, I think there are certain situations where, look, I mean, there's a lot of people who will want the biggest check, and at some point in our career, our business's life cycle, that may be what we're looking for. What I think is certainly more relevant, getting to us to the table, given the family legacy, is somebody that wants to kind of continue to build on what we've done, tweak it in certain ways that we couldn't otherwise do it. But yeah, and I think, look, there's different aspects to taking in money. There's some of the tactical stuff that a family business or a founder-owned business, may not be able to do. Different access to capital, different governance and incentive plans for employees. A lot of kind of value-added things that tactically they can bring in. And then there's kind of the industry specific stuff, which is just, some of it can come down to, templates, just having seen things before and knowing the right marketing agency that may not have scaled a Hispanic focused brand before, but knows branding, knows the right contacts with CMOs, whatever it might be, some other tactical pieces that just accelerates, everything for a business. And so, because there's just so much friction in business, especially when you're trying to grow. And so the capital is, to use a bad analogy, is a lubricant. The relationships are a lubricant. It just makes that path up and to the right that much easier if you have somebody who's seen it before, has templates before, relationships to do that.
That's super logical. Tracy, anything to add there?
No, I thought that's great insight. We really do appreciate that very much, Mark. Good thoughts there. So, Bruce, anything else to add there before we jump into the big finish?
No, except Mark, if people wanted to reach out and get in touch with you, what would be the best way? LinkedIn, send you a Christmas card to your house. How do you prefer people reach out if you're open to that?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. Our website is menperdistributors.com. You can fill out a contact form on there, or just send a message or connect on LinkedIn.
Great.
Awesome.
Okay, Tracy, the big finish.
The big finish. Well, Mark, first of all, thank you so much. It's great information. I think our audience is really going to enjoy this, and we just appreciate all the insights and thoughts that you had today. So I want to invite our guests that are listening, please do us a great favor and follow us on our Spotify page, on our iTunes, or also on LinkedIn, where you will find this podcast very soon in the near future. And again, thank you again, Mark, for joining us.
Mark, thanks again. Good luck out there, folks.
Thanks for having me.